Somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly. Birds fly over the rainbow. Why, then oh, why can't I?
Leadership is everywhere. In our work, in our family, in our community. We see leaders by their actions. We know their legacy. This podcast is about leaders, people just like you, doing amazing things every day. I hope these stories inspire you, they motivate you, and they fuel your leadership legacy. My name is Vicki Guy. Welcome to Ignite. Hi, welcome to Ignite. Our appreciation for teachers has never been higher, and it should be. Henry Adams once said, "A teacher affects eternity." Without teachers in our lives, many of us would not be where we are today. We've had many guests come onto the Ignite podcast to talk about the power and the importance of lifelong learning. Well, today, our episode is dedicated fully to those teachers, celebrating those teachers who have made a difference in all of our lives. Our guest today is just one of those teachers. As a recipient of the 2020 Florida Teacher of the Year and the 2020 Life Changer of the Year award, Dr. Dre Graham has dedicated his life to his students through the power of music. Dr. Graham is currently serving as the Executive Director of the Independent Education and Parental Choice for the Florida Department of Education. In just a moment, we'll be back to talk to Dr. Graham.
This is Josh. Josh spent $2,500 on a week of classroom training for CompTIA A+ and got certified. Josh got a good job that pays $40,000 per year. This is Jeremy. Jeremy only spent $299 on a full year of training from IT Pro TV, including A+ and 300 other courses. Jeremy also got a great job that pays $40,000 per year. Jeremy used the more than $2,200 he saved in IT training for a fabulous tropical vacation. Now, Jeremy is still using his IT Pro TV membership to study for Network Plus and Security Plus to advance his career, but not spending any more money, since all three are included in his IT Pro TV membership, plus 300 more courses. Don't be like Josh. Choose IT Pro TV for your IT training.
Hi, and welcome back to Ignite. Today, we are joined with Dr. Dre Graham. Dre, welcome to Ignite. How are you?
Doing well. How are you doing, Vicki?
I am doing just fine. I want to first start off by just congratulating you on a huge award that you've won and that you're living in right now, and that is the Florida Teacher of the Year for the year 2020. What a huge accomplishment. I can't even imagine what it takes to get that accomplishment under your belt. So hats off to you. And before we got into this podcast today, I thought that I really needed to do a little bit of homework on this. So I looked at your acceptance speech when you won this award. And one of the things that I thought we'd kick off our discussion today with is one of the things that you mentioned in your acceptance speech, and that is that every teacher needs to have their own why. So you really have to know why you want to do this, because as we all know, teaching it's tough, it can be rewarding, but also it can be very, very challenging at times. So help us understand, Dre, what is your why for going into teaching?
Well, my why, I talk about it being a fluid concept, but it's got to be that element that grounds you and kind of it always brings you back to the reason that you're doing something. And for me, I get a chance to look at my why every single day, and it's my students. The reason why I continue to fight forward, continue to fight for them, to continue to make those sacrifices that I have over the years as an educator. It's not because of anything that I'm trying to do. I didn't get into education wanting to win awards and be selected for different areas, but it was to have the opportunity to positively impact the next generation of world changers. And those are my students. And then over time, obviously life happens. And then now I've got this incredible, beautiful, intelligent, talented 6-year-old daughter. And she has also become my why, and wanting to set a good example for her and show her that there's a better world possible whenever we're all just working together to be better and to look at the best and bring out the best in humanity. And so whenever those times get tough as a teacher, when we'd say that the days are long, or the hours are long, but the days are short, and you get through it, but that piece that kind of brings you back to it is your students. And if you're not in education for students, then I don't know what you're in here for, because it's all about leaving that positive impact on those future leaders.
And I know that that impact you probably feel in so many different ways. And I'm sure it's lasting on people forever. I can even think of a teacher who had a huge impact on my life. I'm wondering, was there one person or somebody in your life that had that impact on you that helped you choose this path to create that impact for others?
Absolutely. And I know for me, and I have a very unique situation in terms of this, because I actually took over my program from that person. Being an avid musician and just loving music and its role that it had in my life, not only growing up in a musical family, but also in high school. My high school band director was so significant to my life. I mean, she really was like another mother to me. And when I was graduating with my master's degree, she actually contacted me and was like, "Hey, what are you doing next year?" I was like, "Well, hopefully looking for a job. I'm graduating with this degree, wanting to move forward." Like, "Well, okay, well, I want you to come back and I want you to take over for me, because I'm moving on to start a program at a new school." So not only did I get a chance to work at my alma mater that I graduated from, I got to take over the legacy that was established by my high school band director, who was that person who was so significant in not only my path of education, but also the way that I look at education, the perspective that I look at on how you can impact those students' lives, and it's the importance of relationship building, and the importance of students understanding that they're part of a greater whole, and that it's about being a family.
Mm. What a great lesson to learn from anybody, and especially if it's from a teacher that you can look up to and then and emulate it, taking filling those shoes. I bet is probably could be a little bit scary, but also pretty fulfilling at the same time. But
Absolutely.
it's yeah, it's so. As you're talking, I just am reminded of the conversation we had before this interview, where you told me that you have several degrees. You've got a couple bachelor's degree, I think a couple master's degree. You've got a PhD. So certainly well educated, well accomplished, and you've hung on to music as your focus. So clearly, going through all of those different degrees and having gone through coursework, many people change their focus over time. Many people say, you know what, maybe I'll use it in this way. But you have stayed true to the core of what you said. You grew up in a musical family, music has been your focus. What is it about music that just, I mean, I can see you're beaming right now just thinking about it. What is it about music that just makes you feel so inspired?
Well, music is something that we innately do and we participate in as humans. I mean, you think about, when was the last time you made it through an entire day without hearing any type of music? It's in the stores when we shop. It's in the malls. It's in the movies. It's in our cars. And when we're in the shower, you hear so many people talking about, I sing in the shower, and that's whenever I'm a superstar, but I know I shouldn't sing out in public. And different elements. Music is not just an activity. It's something that is innately human, and it has the power to transcend sometimes thought, verbal emotion, verbal communication. There are so many times whenever I have something I'm trying to express, and really it's not the words that come to mind, but it's a specific song. And I know that I'm not alone in that. But it's just having that ability to supersede what is tangible into something that is oftentimes not able to be communicated is just an absolutely amazing experience whenever you can use that as a medium to elicit positive change, not only in your local area, but globally. Often people ask, what is it to be, or why is it important that I think that to be a music teacher? And I think it's significant for me to mention that I am an educator at the core, that it is above all, my goal is to educate as a teacher, an instructor, as a mentor. And music just happens to be my medium. And that medium is something that is so incredibly special because, I mean, when you learn how to really grasp and control and use it to express yourself, you're able to do things in ways that just are unbelievable at times.
Mm. Well, it's certainly true that music infuses every part of our lives. I know there does not go a day where I don't have music blaring in the background or, something in my car for sure. And not being musically oriented in terms of talent myself, I can appreciate where that comes into play when you are talented in the music area. But just listening to music, it's an emotional pull, I think. There's context that I think we all probably create in our minds that might be different from person to person, and that's pretty unique. I don't think a lot of mediums can do that. And I'm wondering, is that how you use music in education, or is it something else? Is it something bigger? Tell us a little bit about
Well,
music and its role in education.
music has a very unique place in education. We can go into the scientific side of things where we talk about elements like I used in my dissertation and how participation in formal music instruction also uh, helps you to improve your executive function and those processes of planning and working memory and processing speed. But what I think is the greater value of music in a school setting and in an educational setting is the fact that it's the crossroads for all other domains. One of the things that's important about whenever I'm teaching my students and giving them an opportunity to take ownership in their learning and what they can bring to the classroom is the fact that in one lesson we can cover social studies, psychology, mathematics, physics, all in one with just literally just by us going over a piece of music. We're constantly incorporating English. We're incorporating poetry at times. And so it's what other class do you see this cross section of literally all the what are considered the quote unquote core subjects? When we have this opportunity to blend and to add relevancy to all the other subjects, it brings just this quality that uplifts all content area, not just music. So when I have a student who can come in and say, "Hey, we're reading this poem, Do Not Go Gentle into That Good Night." Well, you know what? There's this piece of music that we're going to be working on in a couple of weeks, also entitled Do Not Go Gentle. Let's talk about some of the parallels that exist here. When we are performing a piece called A Movement for Rosa, and it's written about the life of Rosa Parks. And then you get to this beautiful ending where we've got this quote from a spiritual, and then it ends in this beautiful, very happy sounding element, but then it adds this dissonance, just this little darkness at the end. And you can turn that into a conversation about where's the world right now in terms of our relationships between different ethnicities. And so now we're starting to incorporate social studies. So I mean, that's multi-tiered level of lesson that's happening. And this discussion that starts to begin, this organic creation that you have within the classroom, it adds not just quality to what's happening in the music class, but also gives that validation and that relevancy to the other subjects and the topics that are being covered in those other classes. It makes it more tangible and more realistic for those students. And that's just an area that music can reach beyond those four walls of our music classroom and help with the overall community and education. And that's just something that doesn't happen in other content domains. And that's why it's so significant that we continue to support and advocate for having those arts classes in the curriculum, because it does something more than just generate these robots who are great with math or great with science, but it allows a platform to extend creativity, and it influences creativity so that students begin to be able to think outside the box and make those connections that maybe weren't so obvious whenever you're looking at it from head on as with face value.
Yeah, I right now I've got so many thoughts going through my head, but one of them is that, I love how you explain how music can kind of transcend and get us to make the connections between like social studies and history and philosophy or English, poetry. We also know that music is the great unifier because certainly you played, I think French horn is what you told me at in college at the University of Florida.
I'm
And so you know
at March 5th.
firsthand, and I've experienced that in situations like that, sporting events, churches. Uh, there's so many places where music brings people together. So it's not necessarily just the explanation of something that you're interested in learning, but also that kind of that emotional connection that you can have with other people. Um, do you see that play a role in education as well, or do you find that music is really best suited for helping people learn concepts from literature or history, etc.? Where's the balance?
Well, I mean, I think we can go back to something so basic as what is one of the first things that you learn in the classroom aside from your ABCs? It's the national anthem. And you understand how that alone is something that you recognize as being iconic for all the people within our nation. When you talk about the Olympic Games, it's not although the Pledge of Allegiance is important, but that's not what they play whenever you have that representative of your nation standing on the pedestal, on the platform. It's the national anthem because that's the song that is representative of the people of our country. And so it's you look at that music as being something that is identifiable. If we go to the collegiate level, you mentioned me being in college and playing an instrument. My primary instrument is saxophone, but I did march French horn called the mellophone in terms of marching band. But there are specific songs that are banners for schools, and you hear a certain theme song, and that is representative of that institution. Well, it's no different whenever you start thinking about how that plays a role in movies. And when a certain character enters the scene, there's a certain musical theme that accompanies that character coming in. And so anytime you hear this particular song, oh, that's that character. So if I was to go to somebody and go, da na 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 na, they can probably fill in the word that comes in after that. And because of that musical theme representing a specific thing, it's that way not only in the real world, but it's also that way in terms of education as well. You've got those musical themes that represent specific elements that bring us all back together.
Hmm. It reminds me of when, people have like their own theme song that represents them. Do you have a song that
Exactly.
you feel represents you?
Oh man, I feel it really depends on what time of my life that you're asking that question. I right now it's been a lot of focus on purpose and having a purpose driven life, and really was it comes back to that why. And so there definitely has been a song that's kind of followed me through this journey, and just kind of that reminder to go back to the basics and remember that why. When I was in high school, when I was in high school and through college, and I was traveling around as a traveling professional martial artist, there was another theme song that kind of went through there, and one of my favorite artists was Ludacris. So there's like a Ludacris song that was played whenever I would go out and do things. But it's and I think we can all relate to this. Different times in life represent there are different songs that could represent those different times of our lives. But right now, that's kind of traveled around with me has been the bridge or the verse and the chorus for "Somewhere Over the Rainbow," and it's just that is it talks about your why in that song, and it talks about daring to dream, and it just having that tenacity to really view and dream that things can be better, but then also to go after it and get it and not to let anything stop you and any potential obstacles that have been put up. They're obstacles, not roadblocks. And so you can figure out a way to get where you want to be if you believe. So I'd say probably right now, I guess my theme song would be Somewhere Over the Rainbow.
One of my favorites, definitely. So, that actually brings up a good point, and I have to ask you, where do you see, or where would you like to see, if that dream for education, for maybe music and education, your role in education, what would you like to see moving forward? Right now we're living in some strange times with this disruption of COVID-19. And we can talk about that in just a moment briefly, but what do you see as kind of your dream moving forward for education?
I mean, it's we talk about dreams, and of course the famous "I have a dream" speech. And when I look at kind of to address a little bit of what we'll get into in a little bit, but look at where society is now, and I think if anything, the silver lining with all of that, everything that's happening with COVID-19 is the fact that education has officially been deemed essential. We hear that word thrown around a lot right now, and the essential employees and the essential elements. And here in Florida, education is considered essential. So that alone elevates all educators and just the establishment of education to a higher level. But I think with parents and different people getting a chance to really get a glimpse into what educators do every day, not just in teaching students, but providing a foundation for our society, it's also elevating that to a role where people understand that education is important, it is significant, and what we do should be valued. And so when we talk about my dream for the future, it has more to do with the understanding that education is a human right, and not just education, but a quality education is something that every person is entitled to and every person deserves. And that brings up the argument about equity, and for people to understand that equity and equality are two different things. And equity is providing an opportunity for every child to succeed. And you go into understanding that, we're not perfect, and every student, every child is not going to succeed. But it's our job as the educators to provide every student with the opportunity to succeed. So we're providing them the supports, the resources that they need to go from where they are to where they can be. I often tell my students, my job isn't to make you a version of me. I want to help you to become the best version of yourself. And that's what education does. And that's the goal and the desire, is that every student who steps foot into an educational institution has the opportunity to become the best version of themselves. And when we look at education, it's not a one size fits all model. And that's where I think a lot of times we run into these issues with each other, is that we feel like every student belongs in this specific classroom to do this specific thing at this specific time. But it's just education doesn't look like that. We don't look like that. Every person isn't together. We hear oftentimes, or whenever I was growing up, we were always told that America is the melting pot. Everybody comes in and it's the melting pot. We bring all these different people together into this melting pot of American culture. And I disagree with that. I think that's a really unrealistic and inaccurate portrayal of what American society is. If anything, we're a giant salad where we bring our own uniquenesses to the plate, to our dish, to offer things that are special. And those are really the spice of life. That's what makes America great, is the fact that we've got so many different ethnicities represented in what we do that bring value to what we deem as our American culture. And so where do I see education in the future? Where would I love for education to be? I would love for us to be able to have an educational system where people are getting what they need, regardless of whether it is independent study, whether it's a private school, whether it's a charter school, whether it's traditional public. It's those students are receiving the elements that they need to be the best version of themselves.
Yeah, well, excuse me, the education system certainly has been not given as much attention in terms of the appreciation for what you do, teachers, administrators, the school system, and certainly that equity that you mentioned. Imagine if, right? Imagine if everybody was given the same opportunities. What a cool thing that would be. So I love that dream that you have, and honestly, the work that you're doing, the little bit I know about the work that you're doing so far, certainly you're making a huge impact in that dream coming true. I'm wondering if there is a piece of advice that you could give to either teachers or students or perhaps parents that are living right now. And I don't want to, date us too much, but in terms of this COVID-19, we've had a huge disruption in the school year. And disruptions happen in many parts of our world and many parts of our lives. Right now, we're living through this disruption. What advice could you give to others to help us navigate these waters within the educational system?
I think it's so important right now that we understand that during this time, uh, it is traumatic. And that word is not, I don't use that word lightly. And I think that it's also very appropriate for what not only we as adults are experiencing, but our students. They were literally ripped out of their social norms and put into a position where it's not just about the teachers having to relearn how to provide the instruction, but these students are also having to learn how to receive the instruction and then produce the work that they're being asked to do. And so I think we really kind of teeter on this really fine line of being able to maintain quality, but then also continuing to do what we as educators do, which is care for our students. And so the biggest piece of advice that I could give, and that the message that I want to send about education right now during this pandemic, is to remember that we're people, and those humans, we need that social piece, that social emotional learning, that piece that cultivates and that caters to our social well-being and our mental health. Because if we are not in a positive mental space, there's no way that we're going to produce. I talk to teachers all the time about you can't pour from an empty place. And so we have to take care of ourselves and make sure that we are the best version of ourselves so that we can elicit our students being the best versions of themselves. And it's very difficult to do that if we're just focused on the assignments and getting all those elements in. But how are we continuing to cultivate an atmosphere of mutual respect and care and concern for the students who we are no longer able to reach on a more tangible level, but now it's more of this kind of virtual communication? Are we taking the time to continue to cultivate those relationships, which are the core of what we do? I often say relationships are the currency for success. That success doesn't necessarily have to be academic grades and reporting and things like that. But if I'm pouring into a student and they're becoming a better person, a better version of themselves with each day, then that's success. And so how are we leveraging those relationships to continue to be present in the lives of our students so that when we get on the other side of this, we're not having students who are experiencing or who have negatively experienced this situation, this trauma, and they're coming back with a very positive mindset where they're happy to be back in that social setting and continue to be able to improve. So it's just, you got to cater to the social piece. You have to keep in mind the mental health, and then we also have to take care of ourselves and make sure that we're also prioritizing our mental health to get through this situation.
Really important for all of us. And who knows, perhaps through this, the human connection will just get stronger. We don't know. Yeah. So thank you for the advice. I know that parents and teachers and hopefully students watching this will heed that advice well and take care of their mental health and create those relationships or continue to establish them in ways that maybe they hadn't thought about before. Kind of to wrap us up, I'm wondering if there is maybe one thing, or, I know you sing, so maybe one song or just something that you want to share with people about who you are, what you stand for, what you want to leave the listeners with. Is there one thing that you can share with us that that you just want to leave an impression with the listeners?
Well, I know I mentioned Somewhere Over the Rainbow, and I'll use that as my closing. I know there are a number of different ways that you can express yourselves, and singing is just one of those that I've chosen whenever I'm not playing my saxophone. And you've got different opportunities at different times to be an influence somewhere, and I'm just thankful and blessed that I've been given the opportunity to be a voice, but then also to remind everybody that at the core of what we do, in order to live a purpose-driven life and in order to make those positive changes in the world around you, you've got to remember, you've got to always be true to your why. Make sure that you're taking that higher moral ground, and you are operating with passion and grace, and then everything else will fall into place. Someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where troubles melt like lemon drops away above the chimney tops. That's where you'll find me. Somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly. Birds fly over the rainbow. Why, then oh, why can't I?
Yeah. All right. Thank you for that. That was lovely. And I really appreciate you being here with us today. In just a few minutes, I don't know how we're going to top that, but we're going to be back with just some final thoughts.
The IT Pro TV app is available for iOS and tvOS. The modern user interface makes navigation easy. Recently watched videos can be found on the home screen, as well as our daily live streams. Choose landscape mode for larger viewing. Access the entire course library by clicking on the play icon. Navigate our content by category, certification, and job role. Learn where you want and when you want as a premium annual member by downloading episodes for offline viewing. Watch on the go and pick up later on any of your favorite devices. So head to the App Store and download the IT Pro TV app.
Welcome back to Ignite. We hope you enjoyed our conversation with Dr. Graham. Thanks for listening to Ignite, and please subscribe to us on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. Like us on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. From all of us at Ignite, we'll see you next time.